Well, today's project is habitat improvement here on the farm. So we got the little chainsaws out and making some noise. It's here middle of January, so all of the seasons are over and the ground's frozen, so we can get out here and make a little difference. We're trying to clear out a bunch of cedars out of these grass pastures. Actually got some good growth on the grass this year. So when we do a spring burn, we'll have these trees on the ground or piled up by then hopefully, and burn all the tops off of them. Some of the small cedar trees will burn right up, but these bigger ones, it'll just usually take the bottoms off of them. So we're trying to get them on the ground and get rid of them that way. And cedars are really good habitat for a lot of wildlife, especially deer. But you don't need 300 acres of them. So in areas that's going to grow good grass for us, pasture cattle and horses and stuff, we want to get all that cleared out. So that's kind of the job today. See if we can get a lot of trees on the ground, and then we can come back with the skid steer, pile it up and burn it, and open this all back up. Darren's making noise over there in that little brushy pile, and I'm going to work on this hillside in front of me. So that's what we're doing today. You can see the big hillsides back there full of old growth cedar, and that's all going to stay. Every once in a while we'll go in there and limb that up. But that's kind of our deer sanctuary. We don't really touch those woods very much, if possible, so. That pole saw is kind of handy to reach under those cedar trees that got low limbs all the way down to the ground. So you don't have to crawl in there and get all poked up. Our farm has a ton of these old growth cedars, and it's really cool habitat. So we also use that pole saw to limb up some of those to open things up. We don't want to get rid of all the trees in the draws. We're just opening things up so we can see under them and open the pasture up for the cattle. On the burn, we'll clear all this off.
Right over here there's some holes in the side of the hill and some stones that are stacked up that are probably from the original settler here. I think this was deeded, this quarter over here was deeded 1867, something like that. No, maybe 1876. Anyway, not too long after the Civil War, it's a land grant for parcel. Yeah, it's kind of neat.
We're spending a little time this afternoon when it's nice weather walking around the south half of our farm. This hilltop used to be covered with cedar trees too, and there's still a lot of work to be done to clear a lot of the scrub. But this is what the goal is, to get the draws, leave those with cedars and other trees for cover, and get these top flat spots cleaned up for good pasture. And so we're spending a little time this afternoon walking around out here. We actually had a buck show up on our Reveal Tacticam cell cam last night, actually this morning, and he'd already dropped his antlers. And so we're not real serious about finding sheds yet. Probably got a couple months for all of them to drop yet, but it's just a beautiful afternoon to be walking around out here. And during hunting season, so from September until now, we don't even access this half of the property. So the south half of the farm is really not hunted at all. And it's just very difficult for us to access at any time without bumping deer off the property. So we just let them have it and hope that they'll move north to where more of our stands are. And we might have to rethink that strategy for next year, and we'll see. We'd like to be able to at least scout this half of the property, and that's probably where those cell cams will come in handy. We can come back out here early next fall or late in the summer, maybe put out a couple more of those cameras and then just leave it alone and see what shows up and dial it in from there. But sure is a beautiful afternoon, so we're gonna walk around. We got the clippers thrown over our shoulders here. We'll get some of these small cedar trees and see what we can find. Maybe we'll find an antler, I don't know. Darren's out in front of me up here a little bit. We just walked through a draw, thick cedar draw over here. And a lot of good sign in there. And again, I may not have been in that draw for several years. We just leave it alone. A lot of deer run through there, so we'll see what we can find. Here's an old tree stand that was here before we bought the property, almost 31 years ago, something like that. And as far as I've known, I think it used to be wedged up in the cedar tree somewhere. And then it just sits at the bottom of the stand, so that's kind of cool to find these old tree stands. There's a number of them on the property. And it's a good bet that the deer are moving by if you find an old tree stand sitting somewhere, because those old boys knew where the deer moved. So kind of a neat thing, I guess, if you're looking at a new property, wondering where to set up your tree stand. That's a good indication. Maybe we'll go find some more of them and look at those too. Kind of cool. I don't know how he got up there. Probably wooden steps or maybe screw-in steps.
It's also nice if you can find new tree stands on a property, because then you don't have to buy any, you can just use those. So we're also looking for those.
Yeah, we've got them beat. I don't know. We have only found a handful of old tree stands here on the farm, but if quantity matters, we've got ours out. So
yeah.
Here's another old tree stand. This was the stand that Darren was sitting in the day he shot his deer. We just moved it over here. Found this tree and there was an old stand already in it. So it looked as good a spot as any. Of course, you can look at how that weird hunt unfolded on his videos. But kind of neat. Can't believe that thing's still hanging out up there after all these years. We've never hunted, never sat in an old stand. Sat in the trees below them, but that's as far as we've gotten. Those things look kind of sketchy. He had it way up in there, so pretty cool. And here's the last remaining old tree stand that I can think of. And this tree is my first memory of deer hunting. Dad set a ladder stand in there that he made, framed it out of metal tubing and had a wooden plywood seat on it, and he hunted a number of years out of that. And I believe Darren first started hunting out of that stand. I don't know that I ever sat in it, but then once we started buying tree stands we started shifting things around. But I remember that old stand wedged up in there. There was one other tree that had an old stand in it at one time, and I walked over there and I couldn't find any evidence, so it wouldn't have been real interesting to look at. So that makes about 4 trees at least that we know of that had old stands on them. But the same is true. There's still a ton of deer moving through these areas. This is kind of the bottom along the old creek. A lot of deer move through here. So they had it figured out. Kind of neat to see the history of all these old-time deer hunters. There's actually Oregon Trail tracks up on the hill over there. Someday we'll show that to you.